Hello. So I was reading this article like a couple of days ago that procrastinators are more creative. And I used that as the perfect excuse to begin working on this presentation like yesterday. Really, you know that all of us were very creative at some point in life. It usually happened when we look something like this. That was me when I was roughly 2. But really, children are very creative. They're not bound by the limits which we usually have. They always ask the questions. Why does it happen like this? How does it work? And they never stop until they get the final answer. And really, if you think of it, curiosity is the only thing you need in order to be creative. And I was actually very proud of this quote because mostly it was mine. But actually, when I began Googling, I found out it was not. But getting back to children, also they're very good at selling you concepts. So if you go to a child playing like in the sand and he builds like this sand castle and you ask him, hey, what are you doing? He will say, well, I built this amazing castle and it's protecting from dragons and it can withstand whatever you want to throw at it, and so on and so on. Right now, if you go into a corporation and you ask a worker, hey, what are you doing? He will say, I'm doing fine. It's a very large dynamic range between how a child presents and how an adult does right now. Getting back to my story, I was born in a bit of a different family. Both of my parents have locomotive handicap, and that really changed the way I was growing up because I lived in a very different environment. It made me incredibly curious because I didn't understand why my family was so different than everybody else's. And this curiosity continued. I got very attached to computers. I liked them a lot. I began working with them. I began learning electronics. And by the time I was like 14, I built my first robot. And it looked like that. And I looked basically the same as I do today, but my hair was longer. But getting back to the robot, we designed it in order to send it in the remains of an earthquake. So whenever there's an earthquake, a building collapses and you can't really put people there, but you can send this wireless robot, which has a camera, and just retrieve the images onto a laptop. You could control it and you can go and find other people who are trapped there and so on. It had some sensors to detect if there's any kind of gas leakage. And we were actually very proud of it. And we actually tested it in a very hostile environment. So I was in the 9th grade, beginning of high school, and I was living in a dormitory. On the 4th floor, there were the boys. On the 1st floor, there were the girls. And there was a rule that we can't really go to the 1st floor and the girls cannot come to the 3rd floor. But nobody said anything about a wireless robot. So we took the robot one night, we put it in front of the entrance to the girls' dormitory, and we sent it there. And it retrieved incredible images of what was happening there, and we went around and we seen how the place looked, and we were all amazed. We were controlling it by a laptop in my room, and all the guys were in back of me like in an amphitheater. We were all looking what was happening there. And it worked. I mean, we were able to retrieve it. Nobody knew it was there, and we proved it can work in a very hostile environment, the girls' dormitory. But continuing, I built everything from incredibly small robots. This is a nanosuma robot, it's called. It's a robot the size of a coin, and it's made to fight other robots the same size. And you basically put 2 of them in that ring, you give a start command, and then they autonomously find each other and try to push each other out until just one stays there. It would be very easy if they wouldn't be incredibly small. That's like a 1-cent coin. Ranging from that, I built incredibly large robots. I was part of the team who designed and built the first ever X-ray scanning robot for airplanes. So usually in an airport, you go and you put your luggage into an X-ray scanner. We put the whole plane into an X-ray scanner. And it's a completely autonomous system. It works quite well. It's going to be sold next year, I believe. And usually you use it to find drugs in smaller planes or to see in case of a plane has some structural damage which you couldn't see by normal inspection. It would take a lot of time. You can easily do it with this system. But when I think of creativity, I'm really trying to understand from where it comes from. And it comes from a thing called exposure. But rather than telling you right now, I actually want to test something. So if you look under your seats, you'll have an A4 piece of paper. And I want you to use that A4 piece of paper to build a flying machine which can hit me on stage. So you have to build a flying machine from that piece of paper to hit me on this stage. Come on, try it. There's a time limit. Now somebody got the idea. That's interesting. Just try to hit me and not other people. Oh, and there's a plane. Another plane. That looks like a Concorde. Okay, thanks for ruining my stage. Okay, come on, maybe 20 more seconds. I'll have to begin collecting these things. Okay, come on, you almost did it. Almost. Okay, let me just quickly at least grab some of the more Okay, I never thought it would be so many. I don't feel very safe suddenly here. Let's just stop that for a second. And I can see a lot of planes and other structures. Let me just quickly collect them so we can have a clean stage. And I'm actually quite happy that a lot of people got the idea. Sorry. Oh, one more. Let me try myself. So really, a lot of people were paying attention. That's a good thing. Because I never said paper plane. I actually just said flying machine made of paper. And the best solution, which I'm quite happy it was found, was actually to just roll the paper like in a small bag and just throw it at me. But this actually is a bit of a bigger point, because if you think of at industry and at academia, they really teaches us to think one way. And exactly how I tried in this example to make paper planes, which in the end will be very, very difficult to hit me on stage. But when you think of creativity, it really comes from taking something from here, and putting them together for the first time in a way nobody else did. And that's very difficult if the industry and the academic life teaches us to go one way. Personally, I'm a computer scientist and electrical engineer, but beside that, I'm also a musician. I played in tens of concerts, I play 4 instruments, and I still do it today, I love doing it. I also work in photography, or at least I worked in photography for some time. And I'm also a world traveler, I've seen roughly 40 countries among the globe. And whenever I hit a problem right now, I'm not only thinking from an engineering perspective, but also thinking from an arts perspective and how my previous experiences could help me solve it. It's really, really helping me a lot, and I urge you, all of you, to try to do something new. Pick up a new hobby, try to build something new, try something you never did before. Maybe equally important, also be communication. So there was this experiments in some famous research institutes about where do ideas come from, or when do they come from. So they mounted cameras to see exactly how people travel among the research institutes and when they talked and when they didn't. And most people expected that the best ideas came in front of some fancy scientific equipment like a microscope. But really what they found out is that the best ideas, they all came somewhere around the coffee corner. And that actually makes sense, because whenever you're talking an idea, or whenever you're hearing some glimpses of somebody else's ideas, you begin composing in your head what could happen. And that's why some of the best ideas just began as a conversation. Creativity can also come from passion, and full disclosure, I was actually never good at school, and luckily I'm not in school anymore. So I don't really have a very good relations with professors, which is not the smartest thing of me to say right now, considering I am in a university right now. But well, to continue my opinion of professors, I think there are some sort of devices or creatures which use their head to be transported by their body. And if you don't believe me, go to a professor party where they dance, or at least they try to, and you'll understand what I'm speaking of. But getting back to the story, I was like in the 10th grade, I was like 16 or 17, and I was failing chemistry. I was never good at chemistry. And one of my friends was also kind of failing chemistry. And the professor came to us and he said, if you want to pass chemistry this year and actually be admitted in the next year, you have to do something. Use something you know, like computer science or playing with computers or whatever, and do something about it. And we began building this app to help other students to learn chemistry. And it actually became quite successful. We started a company out of it. It was our second company. This is us when we are presenting the company in the world final of a business competition. And the application got used like by over 100,000 people, and part of them actually paid for it, so it was kind of successful. And creativity comes from passion. We created our next year, because without it, we wouldn't have passed chemistry. Also, creativity comes from menial tasks. For example, driving, cooking, taking a shower. Whenever you're doing all of these things, the brain tends to be more open to create new things. And there's a neuroscience explanation for that, which I really don't know. But it's true. You just have to Google it. So like a couple of days I was taking a shower and also happened to have a girlfriend, which is nice most of the time. And I was in the shower, I was taking a shower, I actually had a few ideas, and I actually called her to come and bring me a notebook so I can write the ideas down. And I called her and she was like, okay, where are you? Well, I'm in the shower. She came, she brought me the notebook, I wrote the ideas down, and actually two of them I'm patenting already. I'm writing the patents for them. And really some of my best ideas came when I was either brushing my teeth or I was in a shower and driving and so on. Another very interesting thing is, for example, if you're on a bus and it's a very crowded environment and there is some music but you can't properly hear it because it's too much noise, if you at least hear some notes, your brain will automatically begin to compose songs based on that notes. This is actually a way you can compose new music. You can just put some loud noises and then some music which you don't know, and with time you will begin hearing new sounds. Some of the best creative ideas are actually very simple ones. And raise your hand if you think Coca-Cola makes more money than Pepsi. Who thinks Coca-Cola makes more money than Pepsi? Well, you're all wrong, actually. What happened, sometime in the 70s, a smart guy from Pepsi said, hey, we are in this war with Coca-Cola, and we're never going to win it. You can't really innovate too much in terms of Coke. It's basically the same thing. You can only change the bottle. And he said, well, you know, whenever you're buying Coke, you're also buying chips. And we already have the distribution channels. We know how to sell Coke. What about if you also sell chips? And so they made Star Foods. And so this is how Pepsi is twice a bigger company in revenue than Coke. Another thing which I'm doing, I'm currently head of innovation in one of the largest automotive corporations in the world. And in the automotive industry, the change to electric cars is now the biggest thing. And whenever you're talking about electric cars, you're talking about charging them. And we are talking about charging them as well. But nobody's really talking about discharging them and what you can do with the energy which you have in such a car. So we had this idea which we call all charge, where you can actually use the electricity from the car to do something else. For example, you go on a picnic and you can start your refrigerator from it. And if you look carefully, there's a power cord going into the tent. I really have no clue for what that is. But maybe one of the most simple and most beautiful example of simple creativity happened in the toothpaste industry sometime in the 90s. So there was this factory making toothpaste tubes, assembling them and selling them. And from time to time, an empty toothpaste tube will be shipped. And it had no way of detecting it, just everything was normal, the assembling line worked normally. But from time to time, there was some empty toothpaste tubes, and that was a huge problem. People were basically pissed off about this. So management took action, and they hired an external engineering contractor, which they told them, fix this problem. And that contractor spent roughly £1 million and a full year to develop a high-precision, ultra-fast scale which could measure the weight of each toothpaste tube. And whenever that toothpaste tube was too light, it meant it was not filled with toothpaste, and it would stop the assembling line, it would make a horrible noise, and then an operator had to come, pick up the toothpaste tube, and put it away. And they started the system, and it worked, and there was no more empty toothpaste tubes. 6 months later, the management comes to see how the machine is doing. And they found out that there are actually no empty toothpaste tubes, which is good because that's why they spend so much money. But the interesting thing is that they discovered that there was no detection of an empty toothpaste tube by the machine. And we're like, how can that happen? We haven't changed anything else, but we've added that machine. Well, apparently the operator who had the job to go and pick up the tube, the empty toothpaste tube, was so annoyed by the sound the machine was doing that he put a fan just before the machine so he can blow away all the empty toothpaste tubes. And that's how one operator, low-paid worker, minimum salary, was able to solve a problem with 25 pounds and not 1 million pounds. Creativity also comes from challenges. And I was in a conversation in my second year of university, that was 3 years ago. I was in a conversation with a friend, and we accidentally reached the syntax glasses for the blind. And what were glasses for the blind? We began searching, we couldn't find really anything. But what we found is there are roughly 40 million blind individuals worldwide, And with all the technology advancements and everything, the best solution for them is not really technological. It has 4 legs and it barks. And despite being very cute, it doesn't really work that well. It takes a lot to train them. They're very, very expensive. They're like 12,000 euros to get one of them. But the biggest problem is that if you have 40 million visually impaired in the world, you only have 20,000 guide dogs. These numbers are not nearly the same. So being engineers, or at least almost engineers, we still had another year of university, we began building a system which could solve this, and we called it Lumen. You put them on as a pair of glasses, but they don't really look or work like a pair of glasses. So what do? Basically, they have a 3D sensor, which can see the distance to each of the points in front of you. So there's a screen there, some people there, a floor over here. And we take all that information, we process it, and then we transfer it to electrical impulses on the forehead. So if I make an analogy, if I have an object over here, I will actually feel a slight vibration on this side of the forehead. But if I have it over here, I'll feel that vibration over here. If it's closer, I will actually feel it more intense. If it's further away, I'll feel less intense. If it's moving, I will actually feel how it's moving across the forehead. And with all that information, and with the fact that people who have visual impairment actually have better tactile feelings, we can actually begin reconstructing images. It's called sensorial substitution. The brain begins using other senses to detect other things. And we did some tests with this, and the results were staggering. For the time, a blind individual was able to pass through an open door without ever touching it. They were able to understand how a room looked, where there was a wall, what direction the wall was. And also, they were able for the first time to catch a large volleyball without ever touching it before, or seeing it, or whatever. And this is how some of the first prototypes look back in 2014, being worn by somebody who I hope does not require one. And the project started in 2014. Along the way, we hit some technological roadblocks, but right now it's resuming again, and most probably end of next year, we will be able to put them in outdoor testing or maybe even to ship them. For all the things I've done until now, Forbes nominated me as one of the 10 most influential people under 30 in Europe, and really opened a lot of doors. It was a very, very proud moment for me. Before I leave, I want to leave you with one question. What will you create? Thank you.